All right, well, welcome to the August of 2020 Local Public Safety Coordinating Council meeting. My name is Eric Geyer. I'm the chair of this meeting. We're still kind of getting our feet beneath us as we learn how to properly conduct public meetings via Zoom, knowing that we need to record them, and we also need to ensure that we have a quorum. And with that, I also want to welcome Hilda, our newest member, to the committee. Hilda has worked in this community for a long time around issues of cultural agility and inclusion, particularly with law enforcement entities, as well as schools and other community groups, ensuring that all of us are working toward being more inclusive and responsive in the work we do. Hilda, is there anything you want to say as a welcome or introduction?
I am happy to be here. Thank you for having me, and I am excited to see what wonderful work we can do together. Thank you.
Great, welcome, glad to have you. And we also, Jennifer Lynn's membership was reapproved by the board. So Jennifer, welcome back for another go around. So let's see. So today's first item of business as we get through this is to the adoption of the 2020 minutes. If everybody had a chance to read them, would entertain either discussion on that or a motion to approve.
Jennifer, I'd make a motion to approve.
Jennifer Lind, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second, Sheriff Sickler, thank you. When we talk about the work we do at Community Justice and the impact it can have, one of the examples I give, and I often cite the work that Rita Sullivan has done in this community for so long, is the idea that through community justice, through treatment, through other community responses, one of the best things that means is that a kid whose parent is working with a substance use disorder doesn't have to lose that parent to prison or to other endeavors. We have things within our community that can support them and keep that family together. And when it happens, it's amazing to see. And to think of that as the end goal of some of this work is really exciting to me. And we've seen it for a long time in this community, and it continues through a program called FSAP, the Family Sentencing Alternative Pilot Project. So I get the double P's in there correctly. I'm going to turn it over to Tira Hubbard, who was, I get to brag about it for a second, the 2018 State Probation Officer of the Year, as awarded by the Department of Corrections. And she's currently the regional representative to the American Parole and Probation Association. So Tira certainly has a lot of accolades, but I think you'll see how they're warranted, particularly as she works with Taylor York, one of our local treatment providers. And we get to hear hopefully from Jillian Mann as well, a local parent who also graduated this program. So Tira, I'm going to turn it over to you now, but thank you and appreciate your work.
All right, thank you all for having me today. I am going to do the majority of my presentation through a PowerPoint just because I don't think you all want to look at me. You'd rather look at the participants that have benefited from this program. If Jillian is able to join us, we'll incorporate her in as well. I think she's having some technical problems. So I'm going to go ahead and do my share screen, Jasmine. So I have had the benefit of working both as a probation officer in the Family Sentencing Alternative Pilot Program, as well as now supervising the POs that are working in the program. So coming at it from a multitude of directions, and it has been one of the greatest challenges and benefits in this work. The Family Sentencing Alternative Pilot Project began with a House Bill 3503 back in 2015. Essentially, the legislators were looking at a way to divert some funding by diverting parents from prison. So when we looked at both child welfare, the use of foster care, combined with the amount of specifically moms that were going to prison, and the overflow at Coffee Creek Correctional Program, they came up with this model of the Family Sentencing Alternative Pilot Project to try and divert some funding and divert some folks from prison, keep some kiddos out of foster care. And this was loosely developed based on a model that was being used in Washington State. They had much smaller caseloads there. Each PO was working with approximately 8 families. In Oregon, we decided to make the caseloads a little bit larger to be able to get some more bang for our buck. So we created a 10-year pilot project. I think we're going into our 3rd cycle on the pilot project. what happened initially is 5 different counties were selected to be able to participate. Jackson County was one of the 5 selected counties, along with some of our larger county peers. Deschutes and Jackson were the 2 counties that were smaller in nature, and so we were funded with a half-time probation officer. So I was one of the first probation officers to run an FSAP caseload, 4 or 5 years ago. And so what that allowed for was they paid for 20 hours a week of a probation officer and allowed for 15 clients to be able to participate in FSAP. The funding also paid for a DHS coordinator position, Lee Lauer through DHS, who's out of Salem. So we have one point person to help us statewide with some of the DHS coordination. He has been instrumental in getting us reports from DHS, helping us sort of to navigate that system. The idea is that this is a partnership between probation, DHS, our local district attorney's office, our public defenders, our clients, and it's really collaborative, also in combination with our treatment providers. So we started right from the beginning. FSAP eligibility, and all the pictures that I have throughout are clients that have participated in FSAP here in Jackson County and have allowed us to be able to use their photos and photos of their kiddos. So in order to be eligible for FSAP, the parent has to have physical custody of their child or children at the time of the current offense. So initially, when we first rolled FSAP out as a pilot project, they had to have essentially physical custody, not legal custody, but physical custody of a minor child at the time that they committed the offense. Later, with some of the changes that were made to FSAP, we added that the parent could also be pregnant throughout the course. And so we had a lot of moms that were pregnant during the time of the offense and were having the children later on, but we weren't able to roll them into the program initially, and we had to wait and roll them in later. We really felt that being able to work with moms while they were pregnant throughout the course and be able to offer this as an alternative to prison benefited the mom, the kiddo, DHS, as well as the prisons. So we've got to add that in. They have to be sentenced to a downward departure. So they have to have a potential prison sentence to be able to be eligible. Then we have to have safety in mind, because the entire concept behind FSAP is about working on parenting. So it's really connecting the parent with their child and helping them to solidify their role as a parent, keeping kiddos out of foster care. So we have to make sure that they're safe. One of the ways that we do that is checking for current or historical criminal history that could imply that there's been any sexual violence, any other types of violent offenses. And so we can really look at that to make sure that we are only enrolling safe parents into this program. Part of what we also do as the eligibility is we also get any and all reports from DHS, submit, and we have collaborative conversations with DHS about whether or not someone would be a good candidate for the program. So here are some of the Jackson County stats for what we've been able to accomplish since we've started this pilot project. So we have 20 parents who've completed FSAP. Of those, we've had 19 of them were moms and 1 of them was a dad, and that included 40 different children. So in order to complete this program, it means they did not go to prison and their kiddos did not go into foster care. So we were able to save that many beds, prison beds, and that many kiddos in foster care. Of the 20 completed, we did have 1 that got revoked to prison. And that was for safety reasons for herself. We couldn't interrupt her drug-using behavior enough to be able to keep her safe. So we had 1 revoked to prison, and we had 1 that we did a revoke, but it was for local, so we were still able to save a prison bed, and we were able to keep the kiddo out of foster care by finding alternative parenting options through family members. We did also have 1 administrative closed because she started the program while pregnant and had a miscarriage during the course of time, which then there was no minor child to keep her eligible. In addition to the 20 completed, we have 12 current parents in the program that include 20 different children, and we've got 1 more on the way. So one of the things we get to do in FSAP is walk through pregnancies with our parents, walk through with them raising their kiddos. So how do folks get into FSAP? One, they can come in through the district attorney's office or through our 416 program. So we can get referrals or recommendations for the program. Part of our 416 assessment is we look to see, are they a parent? Do they have minor children in their care, or have they had minor children in their care? Would they be motivated to be able to continue as a parent? Is that something that's important to them? Are they a safe parent? If so, then we will oftentimes recommend FSAP as the appropriate fit for them because it's going to best serve them and their kiddos. We also sometimes get referrals from the defense. So we'll have a public defender or a private attorney hear about FSAP and note that the parent who's looking at a downward departure or a prison sentence may have children, and so we'll get referrals in that way. The other way is sometimes folks fall through the cracks. They plead out really early on. No one knows their role as a parent, and we end up finding that out after they have completed intake at probation, and we find out that they are a parent and they would have otherwise been eligible for FSAP, but maybe we got them through the system really quickly, and so we're able to enroll them in FSAP even after they've started on probation by adding some FSAP conditions and providing them some support even after the fact. So that's been a way that we've got them as well. So what does FSAP entail? How is this different from your standard probation downward departure? So one of the first things that FSAP does is we target the right risks. So we do the correct assessment based on the gender of the parent. Now, you'll notice in the Jackson County stats, we've only had one dad who's been in the program. Sometimes it's a little harder to find dads that qualify because they oftentimes haven't been the custodial parent. But the program is designed to provide services for either moms or dads. We just haven't had as many dads that have met the qualifiers. But so one of the things we do is we target the right risk. We complete the right risk assessment. We also use the right curriculum, which means we use a curriculum called Pathways, which has been designed by Ashley Bauman, and it partners nicely with the WRNA. The WRNA stands for Women's Risk Need Assessment. It's a strength-based assessment that gives us their risk to recidivate along with what their need areas are. Some of those include parenting needs, mental health, substance abuse. So it allows us to be able to really target the things that are increasing their risk and preventing them from being the best parents that they can. So one of the things we've added in is the Pathways, which is a cognitive behavioral curriculum that the probation officer completes with the client. And so it covers all types of various risks and needs, everything from grounding skills to substance abuse skills to problem solving to some cognitive behavioral triggers, feelings, thoughts, behavior identification. One of the other things we do is we refer our clients, our female moms that are in the program, we refer them to an evidence-based cognitive behavioral group called Moving On. It is one of the few gender responsive, meaning designed for women and proven to be effective to reduce recidivism, cognitive behavioral groups. Phoenix Counseling offers that. Taylor York here from Phoenix Counseling will be able to talk about that after the presentation. Also, we look at any kind of parenting supports that they need. And so if they need to participate in any sort of parenting groups or requirements through DHS, we partner together on supporting their role as a parent. Part of this requires partnering with the right people. We have found that working with Phoenix Counseling has been really beneficial for these folks. They do a good job, and I'll let Taylor talk about, she can brag about Phoenix Counseling, but I like to brag about them as well. They've done a really good job of incorporating some of the gender responsive needs, using a trauma-informed lens and approach to working with our folks and combining the parenting needs that they have as well. One of the other things too, which Jillian, I saw her pop up. So Jillian will be able to maybe talk a little bit about her experience when we get to there in TCP, which is the transitional care program that we run out at the Transition Center. They've also incorporated Moving On as part of the life skills and residential program there. So One of the other components that FSAP has to entail is training staff and building their resiliency. One of the things that Jackson County was the first and I believe only county at this time to do out of the 5 pilot project is recognize that when you start working with parents and especially working with women, oftentimes their pathway into the criminal justice system includes some trauma and some abuse. POs that are working with kiddos and especially women who've experienced abuse or trauma are exposed to a higher rate of vicarious trauma than regular probation officers. In doing that, we found we really needed to be able to build staff's resiliency. We have to be able to support staff for them to be able to support clients around any of their trauma needs. As kiddos have been in and out of the foster care system, the kiddos also have additional trauma. So one of the things we did is, as Dina here pictured, is one of our FSAP POs, and we were able to send her to the 2019 AJFO conference. That is specifically a conference around working with women in the justice system. And so Dina was able to attend that along with myself. I was one of the presenters at that conference. We were able to attend and do a lot of work about just building staff resiliency and how to have rapport and relationships with our clients. There's a lot of support and evidence that supports that having the right types of relationships with clients really helps them, especially in a program like FSAP. So this is just a little blurb to give you some of the things that we do. So targeting the right needs, we talked about using Werner or the LSCMI. We also have some specific conditions for FSAP. So I've listed the conditions here just so you can kind of see what they look like. We add these in addition to the standard conditions of being on supervision. Some of those are a little bit different. What we have found with moms, with females on supervision, is that oftentimes relationships have been problematic and part of their pathway into the criminal justice system. So one of the things is that we don't allow them to enter into or participate in any relationship without the written permission from their PO. So it doesn't mean that they have to go it alone. It doesn't mean that they can't be in a relationship. It just means that they have to be able to and willing to talk to their PO about that relationship. Because a part of this program is also providing for the safety of the kiddos, we also have to make sure that the people that are going to be around the kiddos are going to be safe people. So if we have to look into a new partner or something like that, just to make sure that they don't have any offenses in their history that could be unsafe for the child. Part of being in this program means that their kiddos are not oftentimes in foster care. They're getting to stay with their parent instead of being placed in foster care. And the PO is taking on a little bit more of an active role so that DHS doesn't have to have as active as a role. We spend a lot more time in the home and connecting with the parents. We are collaborative in these clients. They are parents. We need to work together. They know their risks and needs. We help identify them together. We build case plans together. I was just in a conference a few minutes before joining this, and we were talking about calling them success plans instead of case plans. And that rang true for me, because building collaborative success plans has proven to make this program so much more effective for us. One of the last things that we do really, really different in this is we do a lot of positive reinforcements, both for moms and kiddos. And so entering them into drawings, providing them with gifts around the holidays, school supplies for kiddos. Part of FSAP comes with a little bit of funding to help support emergency needs around housing or education, or sometimes gas money to be able to get back and forth to treatment. So really important to positively reinforce all of the changes that moms and dads are making. Here are just some pictures, just because I love to brag about our community when we talk about positive reinforcements. And so on the left-hand side, we've got photos of an event that we were able to come together with community to offer. So this is our probation officers along with our clients. Jillian was instrumental in working with me on putting this event together. And this was really just an event to help celebrate a lot of our moms in coming together and working on self-efficacy and connecting with the community. So that was one of our events. In the middle, we have another one of our FSAP clients who received one of the positive reinforcement baskets. we don't have to purchase these things. Our community comes forward and supports us in being able to provide these positive reinforcements. So we have gotten bags and bags and bags of donated items from groups in the community, from everything from homemade cloth bags up in the upper right hand corner to trunk loads of donated items from our local community partners to support these women in the hard work that they're doing, and dads too, although I will oftentimes reference the women because it's really kind of had a bit of a focus in trying to keep women out of Coffee Creek, and that's been our majority. As I mentioned, we had one dad. But anyways, and as you can see in that lower right hand corner, we've got Bobby, who's one of our gender responsive POs, helping out with donations. So one of the other things is the concept of relational supervision. FSAP is really designed, we're part of the family. So we're not just supervising mom, we're not your standard PO, we're in and out of the house a lot. We're holding babies, we're changing diapers, we're taking food to families if they need it, we're giving rides. So we've got Anna here, she's one of our gender responsive POs holding one of our FSAP kiddos. Myself in the upper right hand corner with one of the FSAP graduates. We found we both had a love of flamingos, and so we were sharing some flamingo trinkets. These are all pre-COVID, I'll mind you, as we're not wearing masks. You can see from our prior photos. And then I just wanted to note from the relational standpoint, there's a copy of a text message. And so an FSAP client that I did not supervise, but was supervised by one of the POs, had heard about the love of flamingos. And so when she found pictures of flamingos, she would text them to her PO to show me because she knew that I liked them, and it sort of became a bit of an FSAP joke there for a while. So that's what we want, is we want these moms texting their POs. We want them reaching out. We want them having conversations. We want them to think about their probation officer when they're living their life. We get so many text messages all the time because it's moms as they're shopping. They see something that makes them think of their PO, and so they want to text and tell them about it. They have a question with a recipe that they're making. They have just had a pro-social, positive relationship with their mom that they haven't talked to since they've been clean and sober, and the first person they want to tell about it is their PO. And so part of our supervision style with our FSAP is that we are relational. We are working with these parents to be and do the best that they can. Part of that is also role modeling. And so we have to role model what it means to be pro-social, what it means to parent, how to interact, how to have a family, how to be genuine in your interactions. The kiddo on the left with the little mustache, this little guy was one of our first FSAP kiddos, and he was terrified of law enforcement. His mom, early in her addiction, would talk very negatively about law enforcement and that they would come to take him away and things like that. And so every time I would go to the home visit, he would hide and cry because I would go in my gear with my vest and my handcuffs and badge, and he would run and hide and cry. And so that was our biggest part of supervision, was helping him to identify law enforcement as someone who was compassionate and cared about him and wanted to help his mom be the best mom. And so the day that he came to visit me with his little, he called it his cop stash, but he had his little mustache, and he had some little handcuffs we bought him, some little plastic handcuffs, and he had his badge. And so when he was able to identify law enforcement as something that he wanted in his life, I felt like that was a major FSAP success there. The bottom right is just picture. These are some of the text message pictures that we get, because we have a mom who's like, she's parenting and she's taking care of her kiddos, and she's so excited about this healthy meal that she's cooked that she wants to send her PO a picture of it. So these are the types of things that we do in this type of supervision. We also have an emphasis on reading and education. So when Jillian talks here in a little bit, that's her in the bottom right corner with her little guy there reading him a book. And I had to snap. I know Jillian's like, oh, look at that picture. because she's reading him a book, and I'm just proud to say that Jillian is now in school herself, and we're super proud of her. She's an amazing graduate. So, and we got other kiddos that, you know, moms take pictures of the kiddo on their first day of school and send that to the PO, because we really try to emphasize the aspect of reading education and bettering oneself as part of this program. And then with that, like, there's just so many kids in FSAP. It's kind of a kid-friendly caseload because the whole point is kids. And so Dina and I have worked together on the FSAP caseload. She's one of our probation officers for the longest. And so we've been through a few years of holiday shopping and Christmas presents and things like that, and pictures of babies at the holidays and delivering presents. And so I just thought I'd share those because Christmas is a pretty stressful time for parents that have really limited income, especially they have a lot of guilt and shame around past behaviors and holidays. Holidays are pretty traumatic for a lot of our folks. And so being able to walk with them through the holidays and support them has been instrumental to that relational style of supervision. One of the other beautiful things that we've got to see in FSAP is repaired relationships. And so we've got on the left, we've got one of our FSAP clients who was able to fly to her brother's police academy graduation. And they had been estranged previously because she was active in her use and on felony supervision. And so he couldn't really be a part of her life. But because of the work that she did through FSAP, she was actually able to attend his police academy graduation in New York. Another awesome picture of Jillian with her two kiddos in the middle. And then, of course, bring babies together, because sometimes we got lots of babies in FSAP. So we bring moms and babies together an awful lot. On this note, just using the right curriculum, which I just wanted to throw some different pictures up there, and we're going to let Taylor talk about the curriculum she uses. But this is the pathways. A lot of what we do is strength-based and trying to identify self-efficacy, trying to build a future and to see a future that doesn't involve substance use or criminality. And then some of those positive reinforcements, you can see those pink tickets. We do a lot of reinforcing behaviors and good decision making because we really want to support those. Here's a picture of from Phoenix Counseling. So one of the things we also invited Phoenix Counseling to come to our resource fair along with a lot of our other community partners. That sort of came from ideas about FSAP because we started working with so many community partners in so many different ways that we thought, hey, what better than to bring together a resource fair? So although that was not FSAP specific, it sort of grew from the ideas around FSAP and working with our community partners. So we were able to start hosting quarterly resource fairs here at Parole and Probation where we would bring our community partners together and make them easily accessible for our clients to be able to go and talk to all of the different providers in sort of a one-stop shop. We had more of them scheduled. Those have all been put on hold due to COVID, but we'll pick those back up again when we can safely do so and hope to maybe even do some kiddo-themed ones at some point. So here's two of our providers we've partnered with the most through FSAP, which is Phoenix Counseling, and then the TCP program. So I'm going to finish on this part and then introduce Jillian and Taylor to be able to talk about their parts, but I just want to be able to close the PowerPoint so you can see them more easily. But where is FSAP going next? So I got to be part of an early conversation with the feds about the possibility of essentially doing some version of FSAP on the federal level. So that is still in process, but they are looking at something called, what are they? They're calling it the Finding Alternatives to Mass Incarceration, Lives Improved by Ending Separation Act. So the Families Act. So we just had to go FSAP, but a lot bigger and a lot more words. But so the feds are looking at that, and if this is able to go federal and be able to impact even more families based on some of the early work that Oregon has done in these pilot projects, that could be just unbelievable for these kiddos and these parents. So I'm going to stop my screen share here at this point so that we can see everybody. I am going to introduce I'm going to first introduce Jillian Mahone. So Jillian is one of the clients that we had come through FSAP, and she's a graduate. She's off supervision. She is just an amazing mom of these two amazing little kids. She is somebody I got to partner with in some of our events and have stayed in touch with. And so I am going to mute myself. And Jillian, if you want to tell a little bit about yourself, I think everybody'd love to hear that.
So I started out on a different caseload, and then I switched to TIRAS, and we did the WARNA, the risk assessment that she talked about, the women's risk and need assessment. And my low scores were in self-efficacy and parenting due to addiction, and my oldest child, this one, being in foster care. I had just found out I was pregnant, and I was offered a bed at the transitional care program, which also Tara talked about. It's a recovery program based out of the work center, and I was on a downward departure for 39 months, and I was trying to get clean for almost 2 years at that point, and I just couldn't seem to do it. So then I found out that I was pregnant with my son, and my daughter had been in foster care, and it was almost time to consider her being adopted by her foster parents. And so I thought that I should really try hard to get clean because I didn't want to let that happen. So I met Tara, and at first I was like a little thrown off by her because her and Dina had kidnapped me and take me to this transitional care program. And I fought it every day. I asked Tara if I could go home. I said if I didn't want to be there because I didn't get to see my daughter, and she just really supported me and encouraged me to just keep going and to get clean, and pretty much that good things would fall into place. I got engaged in the FSAP program when I was at TCP. I also got way closer to Tara and Dina. They came to visit me when I got out of TCP when I was still pregnant. The FSAP program provided gifts for my children. It provided gift cards, temporary relief because I didn't have any furniture. My apartment was empty, and I had a brand new baby. My daughter wasn't home yet, but they still brought her Christmas presents as well. Like Tara said, they used to come and hold the baby and take pictures, and it was like having friends that helped me stay on track instead of authority figures. And then, let's see, because of FSAP treatment in Tara, I have been involved in the Community Women's Dinner. I just applied for the Human Services program at Rogue Community College, and I got in. I took a peer specialist support program so that I could work. Sorry. I also just did a peer support specialist program, and the cost of that was $425. And Tara got a women's group out of Ashland to sponsor that for me. But the biggest and most important thing that I got through the FSAP program and through everybody involved was that I have full custody of my daughter back, and my son has never had a DHS case open. I have 2 years and 5 months clean. And James and I, my son's dad, our relationship is supported. We always have help. We raise our children. And I'm just really thankful for the positive outcome due to the support of this program. And I kind of wanted to show you this really quickly. That's my kid.
That's beautiful, Jill.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing with us today. And I just want to go on record of saying we did not actually kidnap her. She likes to tell the story that way. But Dina and I were able to get her a bed in TCP, and it was available right then and there at that moment. And it's not often that the stars and the moon all align. And so we hunted Jillian down and found her out at Withams, and kind of just put her in the car and took her to TCP. So, but she consented. So,
yeah, it was consented.
Awesome. So next I'd like to introduce Taylor York. I'm going to mute you, Julianne, so if you need to talk to kiddos in the background, you can. So next I'm going to introduce Taylor York. So Taylor York works at Phoenix Counseling, and we had this interesting experience early on in the FSAP days where I was trying to get a program to offer moving on, and it was this gender responsive cognitive behavioral curriculum that was not being offered in Jackson County. And part of FSAP is I really needed somebody to run this program. And so I called Phoenix Counseling and I asked them, would they be interested in doing something like this? And they were like, yes, we'll buy the curriculum next week and roll it out. And they did just that. And we've been partnering on this ever since. And the way that they have treated our clients has been instrumental to their success. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Taylor.
Thank you, Sarah. What a wonderful introduction. Yes, I remember actually vividly that meeting. My director and I jumped at it. We were like, heck yes, we're going to order this right away. We're going to jump on this because the idea, the premise was so in line with our guiding principles for our agency. Tira mentioned earlier our work around trauma-informed services, and that absolutely is at the core, the heart of everything that we provide for our FSAP clients and beyond. I think trauma-informed services is one of those beautiful buzzwords that gets thrown around a lot, and it's super cheesy, and I will fully admit that, but I love our motto is counseling from the heart. And I think that as cheesy as that is absolutely who we are and how we approach working with our FSAP clients and beyond. Because for us, what that means is we look at every person individually. We look at these women when they come in the door and we acknowledge that they have more than likely a trauma experience in their background. We make that, we're aware of that from the moment they walk in the door, and we make it our priority to minimize any re-traumatization in the treatment process. Similar to what Tira alluded to, the re-traumatization around authority figures, treatment can also be a re-traumatizing experience for many folks. And so we make it our priority to guide with our heart and to limit that re-traumatization, as we move through. We also recognize that substance use is an unhealthy coping mechanism that many of these women learned early on, right? As a way to survive, as a way to cope from this trauma, substances can help, right? In a very unhealthy way, that is a way to survive. So that's really how we approach treatment, is we look at, okay, how can we back up this script? How can we work on that deep trauma work so that then those unhealthy survival mechanisms aren't needed? If we don't need to practice these unhealthy coping mechanisms, we're not out committing new crimes, we're pro-social members of society once again. And so our goal is to really back up that script and really work on that early trauma work. Tira asked me to definitely brag about our parenting program. So an integral part of our treatment program, and especially with our FSAP women, primarily women, has been our New Beginnings parenting program, created by David Bones, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with his name. He's been doing parenting education in the Valley for decades. He was, up until his recent retirement, running our parenting education program. He recently retired, which we're very bittersweet about, and transitioned the education program to a young woman who studied extensively under him. And the parenting program is part education, part healing. So the parents do a lot of inner child work with themselves so that they can become better parents for themselves, thus helping them become better parents for their kiddos. It's part processing. So you really get that great group dynamic of what is it like to be a parent. So it's part parent support group at the same time. I think there's so many wonderful elements of approaching treatment from this trauma-informed perspective and from the heart. And a lot of that work happens in our individual settings. We are blessed to have a large majority of our staff be dual credentialed in both mental health and substance use disorders. And so we're really able to provide both sides of the house, so to speak, for our clients and for our FSAP women. We recognize that they go hand in hand. It's not really two separate issues. Those definitely go hand in hand. And if we're looking at from healing those early trauma work, then absolutely mental health needs to be part of that substance use conversation. I can answer questions if people have questions about the moving on curriculum. I just want to say very unprofessionally that I love it, and it is a beautiful curriculum. And actually I think one of the best put together curriculums I've ever used as a practitioner. It covers everything from life skills to healthy relationships, healthy communication skills. Actually, right now, we're in a portion where the gals are learning about negotiation skills and how to set boundaries within that negotiation, and what even is a situation that negotiation skills are used for. And that's just what we're doing right now. In a couple of weeks, we'll be talking about careers and building resumes and building dream boards. And so the curriculum is wonderful, and I can't speak enough about it. So thank you for coming to Phoenix on that afternoon, Tira. Going off script once again, I have to share with you that it has been absolutely an honor and a privilege to work with these women. I think that women with substance use disorders and mental health disorders criminally involved in the criminal justice system often get overlooked and written off by our society. And from the bottom of my heart, I have to tell you that some of the most brilliant, creative, sensitive women I've ever met have come from that specific population. And I have the absolute privilege of getting to work with these women every day. And it's making me a better human being because of that.
Okay, that was 2 women in a row that just made me want to cry. So 2 women that I very much loved working with. So the final portion of sort of our FSAP presentation, I'm going to bounce back to Eric for presentation, because my area of expertise is sort of the people portion, but the people portion would not be possible if not for the research portion, because if we could not prove this program to be effective, we wouldn't be able to justify keep doing it. So I'm going to hand it back to Eric to introduce our next presenter, and then if we have any questions at the end after that, we'll try and stick around if we can to answer anything. All right, back to you, Eric.
Thank you. And just from an administrative standpoint, the hardest thing about FSAP is finding a place to put all the donations, because there are a lot of people in this community that just champion this work and want to support it. And the best part is going into our lobby and seeing these beautiful kids and amazing parents connected and engaged, and just being around that. So it's an absolute gift, and the work you guys all do is inspiring. But one of the silver linings of the Zoom experience is that we're able to have top-notch presenters from throughout the state and nation. And Ken Sanchagrin is with us today from the Criminal Justice Commission. He's the current interim executive director. Ken has done a number of research projects, as well as moved forward a lot of conversations within this. But one of the projects that they did was around FSAP and its efficacy. So I'd like to turn this over to Ken, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate the introduction, and yeah, I'm happy to join you all, and it's nice to be able to do it from my home here in Silverton. I'm going to try to share my screen. So I just have very brief PowerPoint. I don't want to bore everybody with too much discussion of research and statistics. I think that the presentations we've already had are what really should drive thoughts about what FSAP is doing and what it's accomplishing. But in a nutshell, as it already introduced, the FSAP program has been around, at least in functioning, since 2016. As previously mentioned, Jackson County has, I guess, currently 32. However, in our data set that we analyzed, 31 participants, majority of them being mothers. But across the entire state, we're looking at about 203 participants as far as the data set that we examined across the 5 counties that have already been mentioned. And certainly within some of the other counties, have been more custodial dads compared to Jackson. But as we can see, overall, the vast majority are custodial mothers involved in the FSAP program. And the data set that we worked with was provided to us by the Department of Corrections. We worked with Colin, who is overseeing the monitoring of the program at DOC, and he would present us with updated rosters month after month. And we were able to track both successful completions, revocations to prison, but then also folks who had absconded while on FSAP status, so that we could track different types of successful or unsuccessful outcomes. And I'll talk about the results of our analysis in a moment. But first, I wanted to touch on some data that was collected and analyzed by the Department of Corrections. This is contained in their annual report that was submitted in January of this year to the legislature. But DOC and DHS have partnered, I believe this is twice now, to examine the FSAP caseload and the number of foster care days that result from folks on the who are on the FSAP caseload compared to both the common incarcerated population, but then also what we would expect across the state for all types of foster care cases. And as we can see from just the simple bar chart here, one of the benefits of FSAP that we can see in the data is that the number of foster care days for FSAP participants is much closer to what we would normally see for the Oregon population, as opposed to the much longer stays that we see within the Department of Corrections. But for our purposes here, the data that the CJC analyzed, like I mentioned, we were sent a roster of FSAP participants by the Department of Corrections. And we could have very simply just looked at the number of revocations, the number of successful program participants, and used that as demonstration of the efficacy of the FSAP program. But from a research standpoint, that's really not the best way to do things. What we are ideally wanting to see if we're trying to test the effectiveness of a program is to run some sort of statistical model that approximates a random control trial. So like when we think about a COVID vaccine right now, for example, ideally you'd like to have a control group that you give a placebo to, and then our treatment group, which you give a vaccine to. And if it works, then you're able to demonstrate the effectiveness of that drug. Since we can't randomly, or we should not randomly assign people to receive services within the criminal justice system, we have to approximate that process, which we can do statistically. And I won't go into all of those details, but what we basically do is we construct a statistical matched control group. We try to find folks who are similar to our program participants in as many ways as we can find, and then we compare their different outcomes. And that allows us to see what we would call the treatment effect of the Family Sentencing Alternative Pilot Program. So what we did is first, we only were working with folks who are identified as custodial parents. We had to rely on the local probation departments for this data because this is not something that we normally have. But we identified potential matches who are custodial parents, and then we began to match on gender, on age, on whether they were white versus non-white, and then some information about their crimes, their crime category, their crime severity. We were able to match on all of these factors so that as closely as we can with the data that we have, we're essentially comparing apples to apples, again, so we can come up with that treatment effect. And so when we did that, when we compared those matched groups, we were able to find a pretty robust and strong effectiveness of FSAP. In fact, when we think back to, or at least when I think back to the research that I've done throughout my career, we have rarely seen differences between essentially our treatment group and our control group that are as large as we've seen with FSAP. And so the way to interpret these two bar charts here is that first, what we've learned is that unsurprisingly, folks who are on FSAP have lower incidences of what we would call revocations or recidivism. So the standard that we set for them was, were they revoked, or did they have a new arrest, a new conviction, or a new incarceration for a new crime? So we had a pretty strict measurement of program failure, if you will. And so when we compared the two groups, we saw that the FSAP participants outperformed these similar control group individuals that we were able to identify. But what we also found, and the reason why we have 4 bars here as opposed to 2, is that the length of time a participant spent in the FSAP program also brought about greater benefits as they spent that longer time in the program. So we can see that after 1 year in FSAP, we see about a 12 percentage point difference between FSAP participants and non-participants. After 2 years, that grows by an additional 5 percentage points. And in the end, the way that we would interpret this data is we are making predictions about what we would expect if we applied this treatment universally to all of the folks we're studying. So both the control group and non-control group, again, it's kind of like a vaccine. If we gave the vaccine to everyone, this is what we would expect from that vaccine. So the way we could interpret this is with our last bullet here is, if FSAP was universally applied to all justice-involved individuals with children. And we could also add the other caveats, on a downward departure with no prior violent or sex crime convictions. If we universally applied our program, then these are the differences we'd expect to see. We'd expect to see an almost 20 percentage point drop after 2 years of FSAP program participation, and about almost 13% percentage point drop after just a single year of program participation. And so again, this is it's a robust finding statistically, but then also it's one of the largest gaps that I've seen in analyzing criminal justice interventions in my career. And so what are the next steps for us at CJC? I know that when we first released this data and it was contained in the Department of Corrections report, I was contacted by folks from Eric's office who wanted to know, like, hey, could you report on all of the Jackson County specific outcomes for us? What are we getting in Jackson County? What would be the treatment effect there? And unfortunately, because we only have those 203 participants so far, we don't have enough observations or enough participants to be able to make county by county predictions yet. But as the program continues to roll out, that's something that we should be able to do. Jackson County, even though it's small, has a growing but robust number of participants, and so hopefully soon we'll be able to make some calls. We would be able to do it for Washington County, and so they were a bit higher. And so if we could get kind of to that level, then we'd feel more confident in being able to do that. So we're going to continue to analyze the data. It's something that we can't really do in real time because we have to collect all of that custodial parent information. But I could foresee, for example, every year we could do an analysis of this type and work with DOC to roll that out. So again, I said a short presentation. What are the main takeaways from what we looked at? It's preliminary, because we don't have a ton of participants. But again, we have a very clear, robust research finding here that this program has a benefit as far as revocations and recidivism is concerned. And again, I've also emphasized that the benefits to this program increase with time, which is a very interesting finding because oftentimes what we'll find, for example, with early research on drug courts, for example, is that while there's a major benefit right in the beginning to program participants, the benefits begin to fade over time as folks begin to go back into what we could, either call their normal life or to old habits, for example. And so the treatment effect begins to wear off. What's interesting here is that the treatment effect is actually getting stronger over time. And so that's something that is relatively unique compared to some of the other interventions we've looked at in the past. Again, large effects. We're very excited about this program at the Criminal Justice Commission. We've spoken to the legislature in support of continued or expanded funding. Certainly in this budget climate, I'm not sure if that's possible, but it's something that, if we want to have evidence of something that works, this is a program that works.
All right. And I should also note that Ken has been willing to come down south even prior to COVID. He definitely gets on the road. So sometimes our Salem partners don't venture into the south, but Ken is the exception as he's been very present, coming down to Klamath a couple years ago and being ready to make a presentation at any time. So I didn't want to make it sound like he only took the easy way out of Zoom, but thank you, Ken.
One of my favorite trips has been down to Ashland for the Community Corrections Directors meeting. So yes, I love coming down south.
Good. So, all right. Again, this is certainly one of those programs that needs to be showcased. And I think the lessons that we can take from it about collaborative work, the approach of being relationship focused. Tira used to say somewhat anecdotally that, when a person comes to her room to her office and they're on supervision, she always connects with them, particularly, as a woman first. And then we can get into the particulars of their case. And I think that really person-centered approach makes a huge difference. The clients we serve at parole and probation, they know our role. They know what we can do. What we're here to do is try and build something different with them and utilize their strengths in that process. And Tira and Taylor and Jillian, thank you for sharing today and for the work you do. And Ken, keep us posted as more good news down the road comes up.